Ventura, Vice President of Business Development at NEC Display Solutions, and welcome you to the digital signage trends for 2014 and what's ahead in 2015. I want to introduce who the panelists are. Nordin, President of TouchSystems, and Goldberg, the CEO of Real Digital Media. Brian McClimans, Vice President of Business Development at Peerless AV. Yanke, Senior Director of Product Marketing at NEC Display Solutions. And so what we're going to go over today with everybody is a lot of different questions about things that we've seen recently at ISD, yes, and what we'll also be coming up here at DSC. And definitely, if you've got questions, post them. We'll be trying our hardest to answer all of them. If we don't answer all of them right away, we will do it afterwards. And so definitely keep coming back to the site and looking at the questions. And definitely always welcome people to continue to look at these presentations that NEC's been putting on over the Hangout. So I'm going to start with the first question, and I'm going to throw out to Brian McClimans from Peerless. And, Brian, what trends did we see last year in 2014 for signage, and what are we going to see here in 2015?
Okay, thank you. Last year, we definitely saw a lot of video walls, and the thing that was intriguing last year, beyond just the shape and size of video walls, was changing them into interactive video walls so that customers and employees can engage with the content that's on there. That's been a really big change that we've seen in the past year, and I anticipate that changing quite fast in the future, because everybody that we talk to right now is really intrigued and wants to understand how they can interact and allow people to interact with the signage. It's just not the same as it used to be. Throw a display up there with some content, let it run, and entertain. People want to be able to interact with it for various information, whether it's product lookups or even social media, to be able to take a photograph of themselves on that sign, interacting with maybe an image of Times Square in the background, or a beach scene, or anything that they can imagine they can do.
Okay, great. And what did you see for the big trend?
Well, I think picking up on some of the things that Brian mentioned, not necessarily in the context of video walls, but size and shape are starting to be topics of discussion. One size doesn't fit all anymore. The 42, 46-inch displays. Now, bigger is big, and smaller is also big. You're seeing displays as small as 7 inches, 10, 15, 18, 21 inches, used in different use cases out there. Also seeing a fair amount of interest in projection, where some of the technologies around projection are getting a bit refined, and they offer some opportunities in certain environments. I think we also saw, and this also picks up on one of the things that Brian mentioned, where people wanted to engage with digital signage. I like to call it, people are starting to recognize that there's really a continuum of engagement, and that digital signage plays a part, static signage plays a part. Mobile, of course, is starting to play an increasing role in that continuum of engagement. So where you might have a sign mounted on a wall that has a call to action to bring something to someone's smartphone, that message, that engagement can walk away with them on their phone and go home with them. And I think that a lot of the network operators are starting to recognize that, and if we can get some of the agencies to recognize that, I think that will be a real boon for a lot of people. So those are two of the big ones that I've seen.
So, Carol, last week you were in Amsterdam at ISD, and kind of talked a little bit about interactivity. And what are you seeing from a trend perspective for interactive?
Well, interactivity, we're finding that everywhere, especially with the variety of touch technologies. Back to what Ken was mentioning, size, right? We're seeing a lot of different size demands, very customized solutions, more stylized. Saw quite a bit of kiosk solutions at ISE. I suspect that we're going to see more and more in 2015 that customized solution, but there's demand to create that immersive experience, leveraging the different technologies that are available, mobile being one of those.
Okay. So Keith, I know for last week at ISC that we saw a lot of ultra high def displays and LEDs and projection. I mean, what are some of the trends that you've seen that are really starting to drive this industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear that ultra high definition, 4K, and even beyond that, 8K resolution is the future. I think the 4K UHD is the near future. In fact, I was reading just the other day, I think by 2018, some analysts are predicting that that will be 35% of the large screen display marketplace. So you can see it's going to go from pretty much nothing, single-digit market share, to a third or more of the business in just a few years. And so there's applications for that. I mean, if you look at some retail applications, those are driven by showing the brand, making sure the brand has the images and the product that the brand wants to show. So I think having that extra resolution is giving those manufacturers, those retail outlets, that detail that they want the customers to see in their product, in their brand. I think also when you look at these larger screen sizes, it makes sense to just utilize that space with more pixels, so we can get higher definition, higher clarity, more detail out of those larger screen sizes by moving to a 4K resolution instead of just the full HD, the 1920 by 1080.
So Brian, Carol touched a little bit about kiosks, and we're seeing more and more visual signage needs for kiosks. I know that's a big thing Peerless does. And what are you seeing from a kiosk design that people are asking for now that's going to be driving business going forward?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to comment on both what Carol and Keith said, and I concur that not every shape and size is perfect for everybody. And that is the nice thing about customized kiosk solutions versus just standard ones. Rather than products that can be shipped and sold from overseas as all-in-ones, that doesn't give flexibility. And what Carol's company can do and what you guys can do with being able to upgrade a customer from a standard 1080p to a 4K in the future, and then adding touch to it, the kiosk, custom kiosk solution can give them that ability to be modular and future-proof, which will allow them to constantly give their customers the best experience, which is what 4K will do in the future, because 4K is so vivid and so amazing that it draws people to a panel and to a display, and then if they can actually interact with it, that'll even make it that much better. But kiosks have definitely grown 10x last year. We far exceeded our expectations last year and have invested heavily this year into machinery to be able to keep up with demands in the thousands, so that they can be deployed into retail to give the shopper literally the same experience that they can get while sitting in their home shopping on a computer or tablet. They can be in the store, they can scan the barcode of a product, find out the details of it, they can price shop in the store, and some of the capabilities and analytics of the software give the store the decision to make. Do they match that price that the customer can see online right then and there? And some are doing that. It's really an impactful way to give the shopper in the store the experience that they're looking for.
Okay. So Ken, what are you guys seeing from a trend for software? Are people finally moving towards the SaaS model, or are they still buying all the licenses?
Well, I think SaaS is pretty well established in the marketplace, has been for a while. Interestingly, I think that one of the other trends that I did mention before is kind of a move away from the entrepreneurial networks and more towards corporate and brand-based networks. And as you see the larger companies and brands come into the marketplace as network owners or sponsors, you're also seeing a shift towards, well, that implies larger networks. And that implies also a shift away from SaaS towards enterprise models, where a more traditional enterprise licensing type of arrangement where it's a downstroke for the seats or the nodes, if you will, and a smaller maintenance fee versus a slightly higher software as a service subscription fee. And from a software company perspective, I think more than ever what we're seeing is a real divergence between the low end and the high end, and that's not a judgmental adjective, low and high. It's more you're seeing the freemium and real lightweight applications going after certain pieces of the market, differentiated from the more complete platforms, higher functionality, more scalable platforms, what I would call enterprise class. And that divergence seems to be more evident than it used to be, where everybody was trying to be everything to everybody. And I think it actually makes it easier for the potential customers to understand where the right fit is. Is it freemium? Is it lightweight HTML? Or is it a fully functional enterprise class platform?
So Brian, one of the things you mentioned earlier was about video walls and growth, and at least from a display perspective. What are you guys seeing from a mount perspective?
So as the panels are getting larger, beyond the 55-inch traditional ones, like you guys are coming out with the 98, the same need is there for the larger displays to be able to get behind them and service the display, because they're quite heavy. And I'm currently sitting at O'Hare Airport, and I've seen installs, and they happen from midnight to 6 a.m. So you really don't have the access to bring multiple service technicians to get to the displays that may be fitted flush on the wall. You need to get behind them. So some of the technology of being able to pop out the display is quite important, as well as the ability to do different shapes. Like Ken had mentioned, not every size is what they, shape and size is what they need. You can mix and match different sizes in one video wall and also put them in different angles.
Okay. So Carol, is interactive really only touch, or are there other ways to do interactive?
Well, I think that interactive is inclusive of touch. I believe that there are so many different technologies that are emerging that allow us to really create that immersive user experience. We touched on mobile briefly, but there's also a lot of sensors that are being brought to the market that would allow our user to go into an environment, trigger this sensor, and automatically get feedback from Signage that tell them more about whatever it is that they're touching, whether it's a museum application, a retail application, educational opportunities. It's everywhere. Again, touch plays a role in that you can further engage by gleaning more information through that interactive display. And again, this is where size comes into play, where you can have a smaller display for that more intimate experience, and of course a larger display to help make it a truly immersive experience.
So Keith, last week we saw a lot of projection happening, and this could be a big trend for finance. You want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was very clear, I think from the ISE show last week and even from Infocom last summer, and I think you'll see it again in Infocom 2015 and probably even some in the next few weeks at DSE, a lot more companies doing projection mapping. I think now with the projector technology where it's at, a lot brighter displays in smaller form factors, as well as the transition over from solid state, or really from a lamp-based technology to solid-state technology, it provides a lot more flexibility in a projector. And then adding the capabilities of projection mapping or image warping, you can do just so much more with the projector than you used to be able to. And so I think whether it's retail or museums or a lot of other applications or vertical markets will be able to add projection into their concepts, into their designs moving forward, and provide just a different way of using display technology to get the message across.
So Ken, there's always a weird question asked for software company, but what do you see for trends when it comes to media players?
Well, certainly smaller is a huge trend. Some really interesting things happening. In the last couple of years, the emergence of ARM-based media players has driven the size and the cost of media players down pretty dramatically. And also, at the same time, it took Intel a while to come up with a response, but to a certain extent, their Bay Trail and its successor platform are starting to compete at the low end, low range of price, I should say. And even the compute stick that Intel announced but has not shipped yet, which is basically an HDMI stick with a Bay Trail processor on it that you can run Linux or Android on. We're talking thumb drive size for a pretty capable device. And so smaller, fanless, Android is certainly a factor. Intel is starting to make inroads on that end. But I think the most interesting thing out of all this is that these devices, their increasing capability, smaller size, and lower cost, are really making the system-on-chip strategy less interesting every day, less compelling every day. And with the ability to upgrade very quickly and inexpensively, not be locked into a proprietary platform from an operating perspective, not be forced into lightweight HTML for technology. What was once a reasonably compelling idea is now becoming largely irrelevant.
Okay.
Here's my controversial statement for today.
What are you seeing from the trends with the media players and also the video attention? With media and everything becoming pretty important.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that, Rich.
That's the key.
Oh, okay. That's what I couldn't hear.
Actually, I mean, Ken brought up a lot of good points. I mean, I think if you look at it from the manufacturer of display standpoint, I mean, we're definitely looking at it from the higher end. We need support for 4K resolution. You'll always have those applications that require Intel i7 type of processing power, but there's a lot of applications and a lot of usage for that entry level, that lower end type of product. From the NEC standpoint, we've definitely taken the approach of not having anything system on a chip and having no PS slot or allowing users to provide their own external solution for a reason is, as Ken mentioned, I think the system on a chip is short-lived, and as there's more entry-level products that are coming out on a dongle or a thumb drive or like a stick type of device that have enough power to run full HD graphics and full motion video, I think you're going to see that need for system on a chip go away, because as Ken mentioned, we've always believed, and I think from an application standpoint or anyone running a signage network, that if new technology does come out next year, you don't want to be locked into something that's built into a product. And having that's a low-cost stick-type solution means easily upgradable if that time comes. So yeah, I mean, definitely on the same page with Ken on this one.
Okay. So Carol, what things do you see that are driving interactive experience? Are there certain applications, certain vertical markets, and what are you seeing?
What do I see? Wow, it is everywhere. I like to talk to the team here about public spaces. That's pretty much what it boils down to, is if it can go into an environment where somebody can use it, it will be used. Predominantly, the business that we're seeing today is public spaces, which is inclusive of retail, corporate, your QSR settings, you name the vertical. They're everywhere. I would love to be able to narrow it down for you, but there is no narrow field for interactive touch.
So Pete, something that near and dear to our heart, and we talk a lot about, and that's outdoor signage. And what do you think we're going to see here going into this year for displays finally coming outside?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for the last few years, we've definitely put a lot of displays indoors. And I think that next untapped area of the digital signage space is anything outdoors or semi-outdoors. So I think, we've already started to see it. I mean, more and more companies are providing kiosks, and a lot of those have some sort of weatherproof or IP type of capability, allowing you to use the product in an outdoor application. I think you'll see more of that moving forward. I think you'll see it both from the kiosk standpoint in providing some sort of true weatherproof IP65 type rating, as well as I think you'll see from the display standpoint more manufacturers providing some sort of outdoor, semi-outdoor type of display itself. And we've already seen a number of products with higher brightness, and so that's the second part of it is not only do you need the protection from Mother Nature, but you need to make sure that the unit is going to be readable and usable in that environment with higher ambient lighting. So you're going to need a brighter display. And so we've seen these 47, 46-inch products. We're now seeing even larger screen sizes, so 70 into the 80-inch range of screen sizes with 2,000, 2,500 LEDs. So I think you'll see more of that moving forward, because that's the next big space to place digital signage, is in that outdoor space.
Mm-hmm.
So Carol, that obviously leads to a question from in a touch side of it. What about touch outside?
Well, touch outside really has a challenge. Back to what Keith was just mentioning, the environmental concerns are a big deal. And when you have to work in Arizona as well as Minnesota, the demands are very different, and the price for a product that's going to be able to work in both of those environments just as well is very high. There are more specialized solutions out there with the development and technology for high bright displays that are actually running cooler because they're LED solutions. We will see more and more and more. I see pricing actually coming down. Companies like Peerless are also creating solutions for us to be able to leverage standard manufactured displays, outdoor displays, and seal those and put those in these various environments. It is an emerging area. We are going to see growth in 2015. I think 2016, it will be as commonplace as digital signage was in 2002.
So Ken, we talked about indoor, we talked about outdoor, we talked about hardware, software. Obviously those big announcements that was made last year at DSD was the whole entrance of a pretty big player that none of us were expecting to come into digital signage, Google. And you and I've talked a lot about that. I mean, I kind of like to see your thoughts on it, but also, what about other disruptive technologies or companies that are going to be coming in?
Yeah, I did a Yahoo search. I learned all about this Google company. They're pretty interesting. Obviously, Google has the resources, both in terms of IP, capital, people, presence, and opportunity to enter any market that they really choose. I mean, look at what they've done in the mobile market, and which has leaked over into our market in terms of Android and mobile to a certain extent. But it's hard to discern, at least for me, what their angle is. I mean, Google's business model involves an awful lot of free stuff, and I saw a really interesting tweet last week, and I had to write it down so I could use it if I had a chance today. And it goes like this: when a technology is free to use, you are not the customer, you are the product. And if you think about that, that kind of encapsulates a lot of what Google's strategy is. It's not so much what the products are, it's gathering the people, gathering the eyeballs, gathering the data. And just, behind all of this, the engine behind Google's prosperity is ad sales, AdWords, and sponsored searches and things like that. So, will it be disruptive? Sure. I mean, I don't think it was a big deal that the Chromecast device was introduced last year at DSE. It's a stick. It's a computing device. There's lots of things that do very similar things. But if Google wants to enter the space, I think where they could be most disruptive would be in their sweet spot, which is advertising. Think about how the AdWords model could be extended into digital signage. It would be pretty interesting. I don't think they have their designs on being in the digital signage software business or the digital signage media player business. I mean, Chromecast doesn't move the dial for them at that price point. But what moves the dial for them is ad dollars. And just to answer the rest of your question, Rich, I think other disruptive things are clearly stuff we've talked about today. Some of the mobile technologies, NFC, near field communications, is starting to really catch fire. Lots of buzz about iBeacons, lots of back and forth between the push of iBeacon and the pull of NFC, but they're both out there and being tested pretty heavily. And overall, any kind of a bridge that bridges the gap between the digital one-to-many display and the smartphone one-to-one handheld device is going to be important. Not so much disruptive, but part of the continuum, if you will. And I'm not a display expert. We've got a couple of those on the Hangout here, but and I'll throw it back at all of you. What does the emergence or the beginning of the emergence of OLED mean for what we do in terms of shape, size, cost, etc.? I'd like to know.
Well, that kind of fits back to you want to keep it. And we saw a lot of pretty interesting new technology last week. Definitely with the finer pixel pitch LED product and OLEDs. I mean, what are you seeing there? I mean, some disruptive technologies that are going to get us over the next years.
Yeah, I think from a disruptive standpoint, you hit it on the head there, Rich. With the introduction of smaller pitch LED, that is going to be a big competitor to large format video walls. So the 46, the 55, the 60-inch product, or the video wall product that are out there, you're now going to have more competition from this finer pitch LED product. So product that's 2 millimeters or less in pitch is going to give video wall products a run for their money. That's long term. I think near term there's still going to be a big price disparity between the two. So from a cost standpoint, video wall products, ultra narrow, large format video wall products are definitely going to be cheap. But as we move forward, that fine pitch LED is going to be very disruptive in this video wall space, because the product I saw last week from a lot of manufacturers was very impressive. And with no bezel, it lends very well to that video wall type of application. I think another one that is, I don't know if you want to really call it disruptive, but I think it just helps the signage space, is projection in digital signage. And yeah, it might be a little disruptive for some applications, but I think overall it's going to be a nice addition to this space and provide those looking at signage an alternative or another method of getting the message across with projectors. I think when we talk about OLED, what was interesting is last week I didn't see too much of it on the floor. I mean, I think it definitely is still a technology a few years out. So I think near term we don't have to worry about it, especially in the larger screen sizes. I think it's much more technology viable or advanced in the smaller screen sizes. So maybe we could see some of that penetrating into the signage space. But I think from a larger screen standpoint, we'll definitely have to wait for a few more years to see where that fits into the applications and usage that we're used to now.
Okay. So, Carol, are there any new disruptive technologies coming out?
And there are some new technologies that are forthcoming. Things that we probably won't see until maybe the middle of this coming year, as far as samples are concerned. Going towards that bezel-free cost reduction opportunity, moving away from IR in some senses, being flexible, to deal with those truly customized display solutions or interactive experiences. The market is changing, price is dropping, demand is up. I don't see a whole lot of change happening there, and as some of these newer technologies come out, we're beginning to work ahead of the curve, if you will, to be able to incorporate an interactive experience with that, whether it's inclusive of a camera-type solution or some newer IR-type solutions.
So Ken, if we look in the crystal ball, we look at maybe this time next year. So, we talk about what the trends were we seen in 2014. If we had the same conversation from now, what do you think the big things we'll be talking about?
That's a tough one, but I would say from a mobile perspective, I think there'll be a lot of shakeout when we understand two things. One, how the tests with respect to iBeacon work out, and whether there's really an integration point between iBeacons and digital signage presentations per se. Same thing for NFC, but the tipping point for that will likely be whether Apple opens up the NFC chip on their iPhone 6s or 7, whichever is next, in June or September, whenever their next release is. Some speculation there that they will open it up to do things more than Apple Pay, now that the development community is caught up. I think we'll be able to say whether there's a winner there or something new emerges. And I think we'll also be talking about how the marketplace has shaken out with respect to media players, sizes, costs, operating systems. Because one of the things we didn't talk about today was some of the trade-offs that exist when you move to Android in terms of control, remote management, updating, keeping pace, having control over the operating environment rather than having a third party have control over it. Some of these things may shake out over time as some of the first generation Android devices get assessed and come around for re-up time, if you will. And from a software perspective, I think we'll just continue to see possibly some thinning out of the ranks and increased divergence that I mentioned before. A little bit of consolidation possible there as well.
So Keith, if you look at from a hardware perspective and the technology that we're seeing today and we're showcasing in InfoCloud and things like that down the road, do you think this time next year everything's going to be ultra high def? Do you think there's still 1080p going to be around and we still got time? Where do you think that's all going to shake out?
I think definitely there'll be more awareness, more penetration for UHD 4K resolution for sure. I think from a full HD standpoint, it's still going to be around for a few years, especially on the smaller screen sizes. But I think when we do talk about the larger screen sizes, those will quickly move over to UHD resolution. I think we're already starting to see it on that 60 to 70 inch range, where you'll see panel pricing drop pretty quickly on those UHD panels, where there is not much of a difference between Full HD and UHD. But definitely, I think on the smaller screen sizes, for the next few years, that Full HD resolution is still going to be there. I think when you start looking at those smaller screen sizes also, that resolution increase isn't necessarily necessary either. Having that fine pitch in those screen sizes doesn't really get you as much as it does on a larger screen size. So for the next few years, we'll still have that combination of both resolutions. But for sure, the UHD resolution will have a higher penetration as time goes on.
Okay. Well, I actually do have a question that came in for Carol, and definitely if anyone has questions, please post them, and we'll be getting to them. And so the question came over is, how much of a split are you seeing right now with in terms of touch sales that are going Android versus Windows or Linux?
Wow, we are seeing a tremendous increase in Android-based touch solutions. Am I on track with the question? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you too well. Definitely Android-based solutions are on the rise. The Windows-based or Intel solution, it's a steady run rate, but those are usually very high-end, high graphics demand applications, and also applications where we're integrating some visual technology to go along with the touch technology so that we can do a data capture of users and dwell time and things along that line.
Okay. So Ken, a question that came up that someone asked about, and you kind of touched a little bit earlier when we talked about the whole thing with Google, is Android going to be there long term as a solution for digital signage? A lot of companies porting to it, but it's a low cost. But now with Microsoft introducing those sub $25 Windows licenses, Intel with what they're doing, is Android still considered a viable solution for signage?
Well, I think if you go back and understand why Android has become popular in our space, it was an OS implementation of Linux, actually, that was created for very low-cost, low-power chips that were in smartphones. Now, as those low-power chips became increasingly capable, using Android to drive media players became viable, and that's kind of the genesis of it. But it was always driven by cost of the player. The fact that Android is free kind of drove its growth. So, and you mentioned the two things that are nipping away at it. Microsoft coming up with lower cost Windows and ultimately free at some point Windows licenses, and Intel bringing down the cost of entry for x86 type platforms that can support full-blown Linux, and all that entails in terms of control and remote management. Android's not going to go away. The developer base is too wide, too deep. The entrenchment in mobile is not going to go away. As you can see, it dominates. I'm not going to say dominates. Well, I guess it does from a percentage basis. It dominates mobile. The only other real player there is iOS, and that's a closed system. It's not going to come into our space. So I think the proof will be in the pudding. When the first generation of Android solutions in our space, both interactive and non-interactive, are out there for a while, we understand where the bones are buried from an operating perspective, from a TCO perspective, then people will come back and assess
So, Pete, one of the things someone was asking a couple questions about, and they asked a couple different times, and unfortunately we lost Brian early, and that's maybe what you might have to share about this whole thing about analytics. Everybody's hearing about analytics out there. What are you? What companies coming out with analytics?
I'm sorry, Rich, did you direct that towards me?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Keith.
Okay. A little bit. Yeah, I mean, definitely, I think that's one of the things that will, be a big change between now and let's say next year, and definitely long term, is the use of analytics. I think, the days of just using digital signage as a way of showing a message is always going to be there. But I think moving forward is those that are controlling the signage networks and those that are investing in the advertising for those signage networks want to get data back from who's viewing them, so or how it's being used if it is interactive. So I think analytics will definitely play a more important role moving forward for all signage applications. So again, whether it's interactive or non-interactive, analytics will be part of a big part of that moving forward.
So Carol, as we kind of wind down a little bit, I mean, one of the things that I want to throw out there is, have you guys talk about a little bit is what are the key vertical markets you're going to see explosion in this coming year?
To be quite honest with you, Rich, I see it in retail, right? I see retail as being that area that is going to continue to adopt. We've seen a lot of your big box locations adopt digital signage. It's very fragmented even as they have that installed. The smaller organizations, the more boutique shops, we've seen an uptick in demand from the organizations that we've been working with over the last couple of years as they continue to grow and expand. You know, and then secondary to that, it's other public spaces, and transportation really is another area where we're seeing a lot of signage.
Okay. Ken, what are you? I mean, from the software side, you're seeing a lot of the different types of companies coming out of the woodwork.
Well, I would echo what Carol mentioned about retail, and I would add that what we're seeing in retail is not just the adoption of digital signage by the retailers themselves, but a mixture of retail-owned networks with sponsor-owned digital signage in the same space. And it presents interesting challenges and interesting opportunities, but the key thing is you're going to see more sizes, shapes, touch points within retail environments, especially the larger ones. Going forward, we see quite a bit of activity in the hospitality and food service spaces. That's been going pretty strong for a few years now and doesn't seem to be slacking off. I think higher ed is a big opportunity for increased growth. If you think about a college campus, there's so many opportunities to leverage digital signage for wayfinding, for community building, for alert systems, which is kind of where it started, but the ability to spread information in a natural way and to interact with the smartphones and all the things have is really a hot opportunity and a great place to test out certain concepts as well. So those are the ones I think are hot. That's not an exclusive list, but when I think of public spaces, by the way, I kind of think of non-owned spaces like transportation, arenas, museums, and things like that. To me, that's where people congregate. There's always an opportunity.
So Keith, any other markets that you can think of that will see some explosion in this coming year?
No, I think Carol and Ken hit on two of the big ones, the retail as well as higher education. I think as we talked earlier, especially higher education with a lot of outdoor space, the importance of having those high bright enclosed units that are weatherproof or semi-weatherproof. So I think as we get more options for products in those types of categories, it just lends well to the growth of that outdoor space, specifically higher education. And then, yeah, as Carol and both Ken mentioned, the retail space I think still is, for the most part, an untapped area. I think there's a lot of room for growth in that space, and I think it's still in its infancy. So I'm very excited about that one.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to leave for each one of you guys if there's any other comments you want to make about anything we talked about or any of the trends you see. And I'll kind of start off with you. If there's any closing remarks you want to make.
I'm
Ken?
sorry, who is that? Okay.
I'm sorry, Ken. None?
We're playing. Okay. Hadn't really thought about a closing comment, but I think just kind of encapsulating everything we've talked about today, just seeing how display technologies trickle down to media player changes, operating system changes, disruptive technologies, mostly related to mobile, really keep the space constantly changing. And I think the key to all of this is to be an observer, but be more of a surfer. And I think smart people will pick their wave carefully and get the best ride that way. So Not every wave is the killer wave, but taken all together, there's just a lot more choices for the end users to make, as well as the people who are providing the solution. Use wisely.
All right, Carol, how about you?
Wow, Ken captured it very well. Change is constant. I think as we look into 2015, if we have the idea that the consumer is looking for that walk up and use opportunity, we will be able to safely navigate the proper products, the proper tools, and the proper resources to be able to meet our end customers' needs. Staying tuned, participating in events like these, attending the shows, very important. And change is good, right? We enjoy it. Keeps us employed and very busy.
All right, Keith, how about yourself?
I think just to add on to what Ken and Carol said, I think the exciting part moving forward is just the merging of whether it's multiple display technologies like projection, fine pitch LED, and traditional LCD type technology, but merging interactivity into more applications moving forward is exciting, as well as the way of getting content to these displays. So whether it be a low-cost solution, high-cost solution, whether it's traditional connectivity via an RGB or a DisplayPort type connection, or IP connection, wire to wireless. So I think there's a lot of exciting things to happen in 2015, and so that's that.
Well, I want to thank everyone for spending time listening to speakers. Hopefully we'll see all of you at DSC here in a few weeks. And definitely keep posting questions. We'll keep answering them on in the Google account, and there'll be tons of videos for you to watch. Have a great day.